From the Universal Tarot, 13. Death. Death, a skeletal figure in black armor, rides forth across the countryside. His ghastly white horse steps over the body of a king. A bishop prays for God to receive him at the time of his death. A child gazes with innocent curiosity, and a young woman swoons in dread. This variety of people symbolizes that death comes for all, regardless of wealth or social station, and we have a choice in how we welcome him. This is not a card to be feared. Death's banner bears the five-petaled mystic rose, a symbol of life and rebirth, and the rising sun in the distance also represents life continually renewing itself. A serene river flows through the card, with a small boat gliding upon it. This is the river of eternity, and our souls encounter death many times along the way. Sometimes it is literal death, which we all have to face as part of being mortal, but it is also the death of parts of our lives that no longer serve a purpose. We can accept it and pray for grace, like the bishop, or we can observe and learn from it, like the child, or we can turn away in denial, like the woman. It matters not. When the time comes, the reaper must reap. Universal message. You are at the mystical point between the old life and the new. Clinging to what has ended only will weigh you down. Release and be reborn. From the Initiatory Tarot of the Golden Dawn. Death. The 13th key. The 24th path. The 13th key of Tarot represents a figure of a skeleton, upon which some portions of flesh still remain. In a field he is reaping off with the scythe of death the fresh vegetation which springs from the corrupting bodies buried therein, fragments of which, such as hands, heads, and feet, appear above the soil. One of the heads wears a kingly crown, another is apparently that of a person of little note, showing that death is the equalizer of all conditions. The sign of Scorpio especially alludes to stagnant and fetid water, that property of the moist nature which initiates putrefaction and decay. The eternal change from life unto death, through death into life, is symbolized by the grass which springs up from and is nourished by putrefying and corrupting carcasses. The herbage in its turn affords food to animals and man, which again when dead nourisheth vegetable life and bring to growth and perfection the living herbage. Interpretation in a Tarot reading. Time, ages, transformation, change involuntary as opposed to the moon. Sometimes death and destruction, but only rarely the latter, and the former only if it is borne out by the cards with it. Compare also with the High Priestess. From the Science Tarot. Phase Transition. 13. Death. A human skull carved from a block of ice faces its final moments as the sun melts it into water. Clouds of vapor rise up from its solid form and form the puddle on the ground beneath it. The water may again freeze into a solid when temperature and pressure allow, but the icy expression it once held is gone forever. Death marks a frightening and drastic transition. The path has come to an end, and the familiar form that brought meaning and comfort will never return. It is time to willingly release dead matter, to recognize that death is a state of approaching equilibrium. As ice melts and steam rises, water is transformed. This is a time for loss and mourning, to hold awake, reintegrate and reinvent. Much that vanished from sight can re-emerge in new forms. From the Tarot of Shadows, Arcana 13, The Witch's Sabbath. Coven, Hexen Sabbath, Black Sabbath. Gala nights of witches and other devil worshippers engaging in sacrifices, feasts, dances, and shameless orgies. The typical coven emerged only after the appearance of Christianity, when the old gods were viewed by the Church as devil worshippers. Pagan festivities and rites are persecuted by the Church as serving the devil. Mountains, the favorite places of pagan sacrifices and the mansion of gods, have become common areas for coven. The medieval Catholic Church considered all these folk traditions to be overzealous, aggressively seeking out members for their legendary gatherings. For that, the Church committed them to the most severe punishment. For example, in 1459 several people were burned by slander of a woman who, under torture before the Inquisitor Broussard, confessed that they flocked to the coven on sticks greased with the blood of frogs that had been fattened with consecrated prosphora, blood of children, and extracts from herbs. They worshipped goats, dogs, monkeys, and humans as incarnations of the devil. Moreover, they welcomed the devil with shameful kisses, sacrificed to demons, prayed to him while selling their souls, trampled across and spat on them, and blasphemed against God and Christ. They were the usual accusations in the prosecuting of witches. In the work of Nicolas Jacquier, Flagellum Hereticorum of 1458, we read the following: not only women, but also men, even priests and monks, used to come to coven and enter into conversation with real demons and obtain the skill of necromancy. Spitting on and trampling crosses, as well as carnal pleasures, were usual at Thursday meetings. On these occasions each participant received a special mark of the devil, signum diaboli. Card meaning: public recognition, teamwork and cooperation, same-sex relationships, dishonest competition, hiatus, a commemorative event, holidays, initiation, a meeting among professionals, enjoyable time with associates. From the Osho Zen Tarot. 13. Transformation. The central figure in this card sits atop the vast flower of the void, and holds the symbols of transformation, the sword that cuts through illusion, the snake that rejuvenates itself by shedding its skin, the broken chain of limitations, and the yin-yang symbol of transcending duality. One of its hands rests on its lap, open and receptive. The other reaches down to touch the mouth of a sleeping face, symbolizing the silence that comes when we are at rest. This is a time for a deep let go. Allow any pains, sorrow, or difficulty just to be there, accepting its facticity. It is very much like the experience of Gautama Buddha when, after years of seeking, he finally gave up knowing there was nothing more that he could know. That very night he became enlightened. Transformation comes, like death, in its own time, and, like death, it takes you from one dimension into another. A master in Zen is not simply a teacher. In all the religions there are only teachers. They teach you about subjects which you don't know, and they ask you to believe because there is no way to bring those experiences into objective reality. Neither has the teacher known them. He has believed them. He transfers his belief to somebody else. Zen is not a believer's world. It is not for the faithful ones. It is for those daring souls who can drop all belief, unbelief, doubt, reason, mind, and simply enter into their pure existence without boundaries. But it brings a tremendous transformation. Hence, let me say that while others are involved in philosophies, Zen is involved in metamorphosis, in a transformation. It is authentic alchemy. It changes you from base metal into gold, but its language has to be understood, not with your reasoning and intellectual mind, but with your loving heart, or even just listening, not bothering whether it is true or not. And a moment comes suddenly that you see it, which has been eluding you your whole life. Suddenly, what Gautam Buddha called 84,000 doors open.